Good afternoon, my name is Pete Peterson, and I'm running for California Secretary of State. It is a great joy and honor to be again on the stage hosted by the Republican Women's Federated. As I said at an event for the Southern Division a couple weeks ago in Pomona, this is the greatest Republican network in California. So I really do believe that, and I really do appreciate that. I want to begin by clearing up three questions that I always get as I've been on the campaign trail now for several months. Number one, my real name is Pete Peterson. Not a lot of people believe that. It's a Norwegian thing. It's difficult to explain, but that really is my name. Number two, I'm a Republican from Santa Monica. Not a lot of people believe that either, and I must say that every time I leave the city boundaries, I've reduced the amount of Republicans in that city by 25%. And number three, and most importantly, I really, really want to be your next Secretary of State. In the 2 hours I have remaining up here, I would like to explain why Secretary of State and why me to you. And I think it's important that I know many of you are very politically active, but I think it's very important that we define the Secretary of State's office, because frankly, most people don't even know that we have a Secretary of State. I spoke at an event in Solvang just 2 weeks ago, and after giving my pitch and making my argument for being your next Secretary of State, the first question I got was, Mr. Peterson, what is your position on the Arab-Israeli conflict? And I had to say, I'm not running for that Secretary of State. So, as many of you know, the Secretary of State has two main responsibilities. They are the Chief Elections Officer for the state. As Tony was saying before, the federal government has 3 branches, but in California, our government has 4. We have the ballot initiative process, and that is completely overseen by the Secretary of State. All the information that you get that comes out of the ballot information packet, the numbering of ballot initiatives, the qualification of ballot initiatives, the qualification of elections, all that is run out of the Secretary of State's office. Secondly, and very importantly, the Secretary of State is also the Chief Business Registrar for the state. So as many of you small business owners know, when you start a business here in California, the first person you meet is the Secretary of State when you file the papers of incorporation, and the last person that you see as businesses leave the state as they're doing in droves, they file the papers of dissolution with that same Secretary of State. How are we doing in those 2 jobs? Let me just enumerate a couple pieces. Number one, on the elections officer side, the nonpartisan Pew Center on the States recently put out, just last year, something they called the Elections Performance Index. And I invite all of you to go take a look at their website to take a look at this. It ranked all the state election systems state by state on an array of about a dozen different measures, from how we use technology to engage the public to how we count absentee ballots and provisional ballots. California was ranked 48th. We are the last state in America not to have a statewide voter database. Do you realize that, folks? If you care about ballot integrity, you should care that as the last state without a statewide voter database, we really don't have a good sense as to the quality and legitimacy and accuracy of our voter rolls. Okay? Other states are able to find out when people come in and out of their state and register and leave the state. We're not able to do that in California. What's the history of that? Every state after Bush v. Gore in 2002 was allotted millions of dollars to spend to create this statewide voter database. This isn't even state money that's been meant to create this. About 6 years ago, our current Secretary of State spent $4.5 million with one vendor to create the voter database. After 6 months, she realized that the vendor was not qualified to create the voter database. We lost $5 million on a project that didn't happen. A year and a half ago, the Secretary of State selected a second vendor and awarded $98 million to create our statewide voter database. The name of that vendor was CGI. Now, does that name mean anything to you? CGI is the agency and the company, not based in California, of course, because we have no technologists in California. How can we even find a technology company in California to create our statewide voter database? A Canadian firm, CGI, is the same firm that created healthcare.gov. So this is the firm that we have selected to create our statewide voter database. How are we doing on the other side? How are we doing on business registration? Some of you may know that over the summer it was found by the Sacramento Bee that the Secretary of State office had a 6 to 8 week backlog on new business filings. Apparently now we've moved that up to 2 weeks, but if you compare that with other states that are actually able to e-file, again, I'm going to mention technology here and the fact that in California we seem to be stuck in 1992. When I told a friend of mine who's an accountant that I was running for Secretary of State, the first thing he did was drop the phone because he couldn't believe he actually knew somebody who wanted actually to be Secretary of State. And then we sat down for coffee and he said, Pete, I have to tell you how difficult it is to work with the Secretary of State's office. You know, when a new client comes to me and wants to start a business in California, we do two things. We start the paperwork with Sacramento, and then we go online with the Nevada Secretary of State just so we can register a business that same day and my client can open a business checking account. And as I get a chance to speak around the state, especially to chambers, this inability to create, this difficulty even in starting a business in California, where other states are rolling out the red carpet, we roll out the red tape, and it's coming from the Secretary of State's office. The second thing, we charge businesses, particularly LLCs, double what any other state charges to run their business here in California. The $800 a year LLC fee, or what's known technically as the business franchise tax. That's twice as much as the next nearest state. And this is the only reason, by the way, that my wife wants me to run. This is a true story. I was thinking about doing this about 1.5 years ago, and my wife was at the kitchen table writing out the $800 check. She has a small LLC, graphic design firm, and she said, I am just sick and tired of sending this $800 check to the Secretary of State's office, and I don't know where this money goes to or what it's for. It's obviously not meant to modernize the Secretary of State's website. Has anybody looked at that lately? Just compare the Secretary of State's website with Texas and California and tell me what state is operating in the year 2014. It is not the state. So why me? The story that brings me here starts about 10 years ago. I had been in the graphic design and printing direct mail business for about 12 years. And just this past Valentine's Day, my wife and I celebrated our 10th anniversary. And when we got married, I learned that I had a very bad habit that I didn't realize I had. Some of you might know this, that after you get married and you've been single, you pick up things that you didn't know that were problematic. And for me, I learned within the first 2 weeks of marriage that I'm a TV yeller. Anybody else here a TV or radio yeller? That you see something on the TV and as if you could somehow communicate with that person through the television, you just scream at them. And one night, and I'll remember this like it's last night, one night, my wife turns to me after I'm yelling at the TV and she goes, Pete, are you going to be the kind of person that yells at the TV, or are you going to be the kind of person that does something? Now, I can sense from some of the women in this audience you understand the gravity of that question. And so what it meant for me was really rethinking what I was doing. I was living a very comfortable life, again, in the graphic services business. I really liked what I was doing. But we made a decision within that following month that I was going to go back to school. We ended up at Pepperdine, specifically at the School of Public Policy. I got my master's degree in public policy there about 8 years ago. And that began a complete career change away from the private sector world into a very particular field called civic engagement. You see, I believe the relationship between government and citizens is fundamentally broken. And it's also fundamentally changing because of technology and the fiscal crisis. And so that decision has led me now back to Pepperdine, where for the last 5 years I head up an institute there called the Davenport Institute for public engagement. And for the better part of the last decade, I've been all over this state. You don't know me because I'm not a politician, but I've been involved in policy for the last 7 or 8 years, traveling from San Diego to Eureka, from Morro Bay to Modesto. The general manager for the Conejo Valley Parks District actually is an advisor to my institute at Pepperdine, consulting with and improving the public processes that these cities work with. Because again, folks, we need someone who's not just a politician running for this office. This is a particular office that needs expertise in the area of civic engagement. And that is what I do. Whatever happens in this race, and if it so happens that we don't have to go to Sacramento and I have to stay at my Ocean View office in Malibu, well, we'll do that. But suffice it to say, I've made a life change because I fundamentally believe that governments need to be more responsive and accountable to their citizens. And I can do this job. What I've been doing around the state. I've trained 700 public sector officials in the state in how to lead more effective public processes. I understand how technology can be used to better engage the public. I want to bring these experiences and technologies to Sacramento to fundamentally transform the office. Because what we need there is a chief engagement officer for California voters and California businesses. Because where my opponents are running for the office of Secretary of State, I am running for the job. We should have people that are running for the job. This is a serious office, has serious responsibilities, and rather than just somebody turning out of the legislature and saying, well, where's a soft place to land before I can run on to something else, we should have people that have expertise and passion for these issues that really want to transform the office in the interest of all Californians. You have my pledge that this is what I've done and this is what I'm doing. Please go to our website. Please go to our website. It's petesos.com. We need your support. We need your help. We have cards in the back. Even small donations for a race like mine are very helpful. Please support and get behind this race. Pete SOS, Secretary of State, would love to get your support. Thank you.